Look at that gap there. Look at that. That's awesome. My name is Edgar. I'm the founder and owner of Edgar Sherman Design. Today I'm going to go do a breakdown on my 12-3 rifle, my main dual rifle for a lot of my training courses and product testing. We're going to dive into it. Right here on the stock, working from the rear side, we've got a B5 system stock here. Big fan of the company, big fan of the people. It's a really reliable stock that's going to go and build up good placement every single time. I can get really good strings of fire. I don't have to worry about it shifting on me. Moving forward, I've got a standard buffer tube on here, nothing fancy about it, but what I have done is I've drilled out holes on the inside through here, so that way I don't have any catastrophic failures for any sort of water drainage. Moving on from there, I've got a Law Tactical folder. I've had this on here for years. Originally, my setup was a pistol setup, and I wanted to have it set up that way with the Law folder to get an extra length of pull, because the length of pull for the setup wasn't long enough when I was using an SB Tactical brace on here. But the Law folder stayed because it helps balance out the rifle really well. So I have a lot of stuff on the front end of the gun, and by having the Law folder on here, my center of gravity on this rifle is a lot more center aligned, so it means it's a lot easier to go and handle and control over a long period of time. Moving from here, we've got one of our pistol grips. This is a new design that we're coming out with. So depending on when this video goes live, you'll have to see these. This is one of the more coarse textures here. I like this a lot, especially because this gun's being used in all sorts of events. So if I'm out training under night vision, in the rain, in the snow, whatever it is, this is my do-all setup for the most part, and I use this all the time in all sorts of different environments. So I opted for the coarser texture. I also like the more mild one, but I'll probably use hockey tape on that a lot of the times, depending on the situation. But I like the setup a lot. When we were designing it, I was running into a lot of issues with my wrists from jiu-jitsu and lifting and just years of abuse. And when we were designing this, helped to kind of alleviate some of those problems. So I'm very excited by that product. Next up in here, we've got a charging handle. So this is a standard Geisley charging handle here, but it's the BA version. I worked with BA for a little bit. They sent me some stuff to test out, but I like this Geisley charging handle a lot. I've used a lot of different ones, but this one seems to be the most consistent for me. Every time that I'm going and getting access and running the bolts or anything like that, whether I'm wearing gloves, anything of the like, it's just very consistent for me. I'm not getting it snagged on anything, and I'm not having any issues where I'm slipping over it or cutting up my hands or anything of the like. I'm rocking Magpul Embless Pro sights. So I've got front and rear through here. I like the concept of 2 as 1, 1 as none, but also if this is my dual setup and I run out of batteries with my Optic, or if it goes down, iron sights are always a good fail-safe for that. Moving forward again, we have a riser here. This is the LaRue Tactical 5/8 inch riser. I've been testing it out for a little bit. My setup's a little bit weird. I actually bridged this, which I know that some people will hate, some people might like. Either way, my rail's not rotating through here. I haven't seen any accuracy deviation whenever I've been training with this rifle, so I haven't had any downsides of it. Now, for this riser, I think it makes a lot of sense if you are running a magnified optic in the back to just give you some sort of extra power through there. I'm not running that consistently right now. I do have a magnifier that I can slap on there, but overall, I'm probably gonna go with something a little bit different and just chop off that section, maybe shift the riser so it's not bridging for the people who hate that, but primarily just because I don't need the extra weight from this. Overall, LaRue riser has been great. They've been doing this since before it was cool, and I'm actually using this from a buddy who picked it up, I don't know, back in 2017 or something like that, and it's been holding up strong for us. For my optic, I've got an EOTech EXPS 3.0. Big fan of this optic. I've shot maybe 70 to 90,000 rounds with EOTechs. This one alone has been the main, I guess, breadwinner for all of the training and everything I've been doing. So it's seen a lot of abuse from a lot of different training events, media events, just all sorts of stuff. So really big fan of it. One thing I always like to do though is I will put witness marks on all of the screws on any of the setups through here, just so I know where everything is. And I'll check my zero every once in a while. I've got a 50-yard zero on this, but I'm gonna try switching it to a 36-yard zero soon. On the back side here, I've got upper and lower from Ballistic Advantage. It's the same Ballistic Advantage setup that Arrow uses, so I believe they're partner companies, but same setup. I just like the spade look. I think it's pretty cool, and it's been working well for me. I like the fact that there is a little bit more of a mag well to it. It makes reloads really nice and easy, so overall good setup there. For my selector, I'm rocking a Knights Armament Ambi selector. Really big fan of this generation of them. The new generation's cool, but I like the ode to the classics. It's also just extremely smooth. They have a nice scallop cut on the bottom, so whenever I'm manipulating my safety, I can actually go and drive my hand back like so to get my adjustments rather than just using my thumb through everything, especially when I'm doing reloads. But overall, really reliable, great little setup there. I've got a Geisley SSAE trigger in here. I was running an SD3G trigger in for a really long time, but I wanted to switch away from that because I shoot in the winter a lot, and the SD3G, I didn't have a tactile wall to the same degree that I get with the SSAE or SSA trigger. So I switched out to that because when shooting with gloves, I wanted to make sure that I was going to get to that wall and I had good consistent shots. And if this is my dual setup, I want to make sure that I'm extremely accurate with every shot and controlled. And with the SD3G, when my fingers started getting cold, it was very easy to send 3 or 4 rounds when I was trying to send 2 rounds on target. So I think it's important to be able to have good trigger control, and these triggers are fast but also very consistent, and you have good reliability with it. Moving from there, bolt carrier group, ballistic advantage through here. I keep it pretty plain and simple for the bolt carrier groups. Either a nitride finish or phosphite, doesn't really matter too much to me. I just look for what's going to handle up the best in the cold, what's not going to draw a lot of attention and is pretty easy to maintain. Pretty much covers the majority of the front section. Last point to touch on, I have a Parker Mountain Machine enhanced paddle section through here on just a standard bolt release. The reason being is that whenever I go for a reload, I'm gonna go and drive my thumb up, and I'm gonna be trying to get my hand back to my EFG as fast as possible. So having the forward release here makes it a lot easier. I've tried a lot of other things. A lot of companies shift stuff back, and then you have to reach your thumb further back. The bad levers and different other paddles and stuff are great, but since I do a lot of training with the military end users, or just people that don't necessarily run these, I wanted this setup to be tailored to me, but also make sure that all my fundamentals still work, regardless of the accessories that I have on here. The handguard / rail that I run is from Q. I got this a long time ago when I went over to work with those guys and was checking out the shop. I think this was one of their blend ones. One of the M-Lux slots is a little bit larger than the others, and I haven't had any issues with it. The big thing that I look for in a rail is something that's lightweight and reliable, but the reliability really comes into running with a laser system. I do a lot of shooting under night vision, and so I want to know that my laser is not going to be shifting 0 because the rail has any sort of play in it and is potentially shifting or twisting. Their lockup system is really clean and nice, and I haven't had any issues with that. Barrel that I'm running in here is a Ballistic Advantage 12.3 Hansen with an adjustable superlative arms gas block. I have some fancy gas tube in here that Jared, the director of sales here, recommended to me. I've swapped out this barrel multiple times because I've shot out. After 25,000 rounds, I've shot through these barrels. I still have the original gas block that I'm using in this. Just cleaned it out a little bit and swapped out gas tubes, and it's been running fine. On here, we have our enhanced foregrip. This is the 1.5 version. I've been running it since the original prototype days on this rifle. It's been a really fun project that has been updated over the years, especially once I brought another designer onto the team. It was cool to go and enhance it even further than the original design. For a light / laser system up in here, I've got a mod light. I'm running a PLH V2. I like that a lot because it's, again, more of a dual setup for me. So I'm running that. I've got a Reptilla mount on here. I like the stuff that they're doing. And what's really cool is, again, matching the clear ano gray look. I'm a designer, we like gray things. So I mounted that on here. But it's also really nice because I can integrate it really well with my D-ball. So it's nice and flush up here. I'm running it on the left side, which I didn't traditionally used to do. I used to always have my lights on the opposite side. I don't know if it was just for a view thing or if it was for when I was going going hands-on, or whatever, words. If I was going hands-on with something or switching to my handgun and I didn't want to have more stuff hitting against me. But I realized that in running a lot of different courses, especially in New England, a lot of issues come from having, one, different light manufacturers altogether. We have Mod Light, Reptilla, Surefire, whatever pressure pads you're running, all those different things can lead to issues where you're not having consistency in the light beam. I switched away from having any of the remote tail switches and pressure pads for my white light because it's not something that I'm primarily going to. I went with a push button tail cap. The other reason for going to this, aside from reliability, is that I can go and do single man CQB, which kind of doesn't really exist for anyone who knows CQB, just taking a 50-50 chance. But what it allows me to do is it allows me to go and activate my light and open a door. So if I'm clearing my house or something like that, I can go and activate this, I can open a door, I can do whatever I need to do. Moving on to my secondary aiming device, this is a D-Ball A2 full power. Really big fan of full power lasers. I know that they're harder to get as civilians. This one's obviously very beat up, used and abused. In New England, we deal with a lot of fog, a lot of just bad weather, snow, rain, and having a full power laser when you're trying to shoot past 100, maybe 200 yards starts to become a necessity if you're actually going to go and use that laser on your target. Downside for this weapon system, or this light laser combo, is the illuminator is not that great. It gets really clogged up with gunk, and then it looks like I'm trying to go and illuminate something through a mesh screen that's got a bunch of peanut butter thrown on it. It's horrible. So I have to clean this a lot, which stinks, but overall the benefits of it have been great. It's been really reliable, even if it's taken some beaters. It's been hit off a bunch of stuff, but it's worked and it's held at zero really well. Other thing with the D-balls, sometimes when you adjust them, the turrets will basically have to catch up after there's been recoil. You can sometimes bump it and then it'll get it back to zero. I do plan on trying out one of the EOTech OGLs. I've heard some really good things. We're friends with some of the guys over at EOTech, and it seems like they're doing some really promising stuff there. I'm running a Mod Light and Unity hot button, I believe this is what it's called, or no, Mod button. Oh my god, so much talking. All right, I'm running a Mod Light hot button and mod button. Me. All right, I'm running a Mod Light mod button on here, and the reason being is it's really low profile, but the cool thing about it is that if I'm running a laser and I'm going to be shooting under a vehicle or anything like that, a lot of times you're going to learn that you need to go and leave that laser on in order to get the stable shooting position you need. In order to do so, you need to be able to double tap the laser to keep it on if you're not going to have your hand actually making contact with it. So if I have to shoot under a vehicle and I'm using the back section of my EFG, or if I'm using my sling to help stabilize, I can go and double tap this really easily and get that laser to stay on. Some of the last things on here, I'm running a Surefire RC2. This is a 5.56 variation. Really big fan of this can. Again, lots of rounds through it. I've got a Surefire 4-prong on here. They're cool and fancy because the military uses them. 3 prongs are just as good. I mean, maybe they're not, but these are cooler, I guess. So I like this. It's a good setup. I used to run a war comp for a little while, but the war comp is not great when you're shooting with friends and you don't have a suppressor on. They hate you for it. And then it also shoots all the carbon directly into your locking rings of your suppressor. Not a big fan of that. It makes it so that you have to actually clean this locking area. Also, just look at that gap there. It's beautiful. Look at that. That's awesome. Last things on here is, of course, an ESD sling made by yours truly. So this is one of our 1.5 variations in Wolf Gray. Again, this is what kind of kicked off the company, so I'm a pretty big fan of the sling. I also have the paracord guides on here. I was working on installing the sling and setting it up on my rifle, and one of the guys in the team was like, how about we just go and make something that contains the knot on here? Because I was just hand tying, doing an overhand knot with paracord for years. And we started designing this, and it's been a big success, and I'm a huge fan of it, and it just makes the weapon system a lot more complete and more reliable as a whole. That's the overall setup on the rifle. I tried to give you a little bit of the why behind a lot of the stuff. Some of the things I might change will be the laser setup, going with something a little bit lighter, newer, better illuminator. Probably change out my riser, cut it off, save a little bit more weight, but that's the overall setup. It's kind of my do-all, go-to setup, so that way I can train in all sorts of different environments and events. If you guys have any questions, drop a comment below. Happy to answer, happy to give you guys the why behind anything, and we'll keep updating this as the years go on. Thanks for tuning in, guys.